Another one is being a male's a matter of birth. Being a man's a matter of choice.
Right.
And David was 17 when he killed Goliath.
Yeah.
And I've known, and that's mature. He took responsibility for all of Israel.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Steve Hinton, and I serve as a pastor and author.
I'm your co-host, Matthias. I serve as a personal trainer and a volunteer at my local church.
We want to welcome you to The Man Identity, a podcast that is dedicated to calling up young men into purposeful manhood, which is ultimately found in Jesus Christ and being made in the image of God.
In a culture that is often deliberately set against young men, we're here to intentionally build hope, clarity, and strength into the hearts of these men who are searching for purpose. Together, we will face tough issues head on, throw down some weekly challenges, and have some fun along the way.
Because solid manhood is not automatic, but rather it's a choice. We're here to walk alongside you and encourage you to live out your authentic identity in being made in the image of God for a purpose larger than you have ever imagined.
So join us now for another episode of The Man Identity. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of The Man Identity. Thank you for tuning back in. Hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We got Christmas coming up here soon, and we also have some wonderful episodes in store for you guys, so make sure to stick around. Thanks again for tuning in. Steve.
Yes, Matthias, I'm glad to see you. We've been in communication a tiny bit, but it's like, even though it's been 2 weeks since we were actually, conversing together, it feels like forever. And so I'm glad to be back with you for a full episode of The Man Identity.
Feels good to be back. I'm enjoying this. And I did miss it. I was like, man, my weeks felt a little empty without, my 2 weeks felt a little empty without doing this.
Yeah. I did get a text from a guy who said that he appreciated the quick huddle up, and maybe we ought to do more than that. You may find this interesting. I was talking to a guy in Arizona. His name is Mike C., and he is a radio host. And we were talking about the podcast. And he asked me if I was burnt out yet and tired yet. And I said, well, no, not at all. We're enjoying this. I think we're helping people. And he made the observation that most podcasts tank by episode 13. And here we are today, episode 15. And it's just like, let's just keep this thing going.
We didn't tank yet. Let's keep going.
We didn't tank yet. So, hey, Matthias, I felt like I had a really good conversation with GF Watkins. And I was actually on the ranch, Jordan Ranch, near Schulenburg, Texas. For those who don't have a clue about where Schulenburg would be, if you look on a map, Interstate 10 between Houston and San Antonio, and the entire ranch is set up. The retreat center originally was set up with the idea of bringing young men there and encouraging them and building them into solid manhood. And I was there for another event, but I had the opportunity to get together with GF afterward, and he was very gracious. And we'll have his information in the show notes. But it was fun. It was educational, and I believe he had a lot to offer young men today. Did you notice? I thought that was interesting that he quoted Dr. Cole in something along the lines of, "We are born male, but being a man is a choice." And I thought, okay, well, Matthias and I are pretty smart, because we put that in our introduction for every podcast.
Yes, we do. Exactly. So for me, because I've heard the name GF Watkins from you, and I'm sure the viewer doesn't know anything. Maybe they do know something about GF Watkins, but if they don't, tell us a little bit about kind of what this ranch does. Tell them kind of what he does, what he's in charge of, kind of this organization. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, GF grew up as a coach. His father was a coach. He has always had a desire to help young people, and particularly young men, grow. He felt a call to leave the education system and go into full-time vocational ministry, which he did. And he began to primarily share the gospel, with everybody, but to share Christ with young men and disciple young men and help them grow. And that formed a church on the west side of Houston. And after he was there for a number of years, the vision, the need to reach young men and disciple young men grew and grew and grew. And it came to a point in time where he just stepped out in faith. And part of being a man, Matthias, is that we need to step out in faith. We
Yeah.
need to move from passivity to being aggressive. Even though we're going to drop the ball, we're not always going to get it right.
Yeah.
So he created this program. So it's not just the retreat center, but it is a place where people can go, but a program called Manhood University. We'll have information in the show notes about that, where there is a path where he can bring affirmation into the hearts of young men, help them find their purpose, help them find their passion, and then build some direction around that instead of just simply being passive, which is one of the issues that we deal with in the hearts and minds of so many young men today, especially young men who have been beat down and beat up. That you are created for a purpose. You do have identity, and there's power and purpose for your life, and we want to encourage you for that. And that's a lot of what GF does, and I'm excited to hear him unpack some of that.
Yeah, and it's a huge need with the fatherless epidemic right now. You know, and GF, and you talk about this, but young men need that validation from a father. That the stuff you just said is a huge need for a young man who may have never had that, or even a man who's in later stages of life who've never heard that. I know y'all talk about that for a moment.
Yeah.
So that's a big need going on right now. So why don't we jump right into this interview?
Hit it.
GF, I met you close to a year ago, and I was very gracious or thankful for the grace that you gave us. I had some other pastors here at Jordan Ranch. And a lot of times people don't realize the stress that pastors are under.
Right.
And you just allowed us to have an opportunity to come together as a covenant group. And I got to meet you there at that time and hear more of your vision. And so I'm here today, and we're talking with other church leaders, but we were in what you created, the Hall of Fame of manhood, great men who have mentored others. And I love this quote that you had there from Dr. Ed Cole. And maybe I've read one of his books, I'm not sure, but you had this quote that he said that maturity doesn't come with age, but with the acceptance of responsibility. And to me, that really meant something, because you had guys in previous generations, they were 15 and they were men.
Yep.
And you have guys today who are 50 and they're not men.
Still searching.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you unpack that, just the acceptance of responsibility?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the program.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And we are at Jordan Ranch, and that's where all this thing kind of unfolded with you and I. And there's a place created for men to find out who they are, for leaders to be vetted and built up, and for a purpose, which is to save the world. And that's what another Coleism is. Heroes are men who are created for such a time as this.
Okay.
There are men who act in a moment of time on a need greater than current need in their own life. And that's what heroes are. And I think you're a hero. I think what you're doing here is heroic, and you've stepped into that. A lot of young men are going to hear this, and they're going to say, that helped me.
Well, that's what I hope,
Yeah. And that, because it helped them, it's going to help their family. And that's how 2 Timothy works out. Maturity, we all need that. We still need it every day. We need to grow in that. But it's what's going on in our society today. Maybe the older we get, the more prevalent it becomes, because we can see it.
Right.
Maybe we just didn't see it when we were young, But maturity means accepting responsibility, taking responsibility. Too many young men, you've heard this your whole life, they're like butterflies. They go from flower to flower, impregnating, and there are babies out there that don't have a male presence in their life. So that baby grows up without understanding what the male's responsibility is. And so we're a fatherless generation.
Yeah.
That's what's happened with the butterfly, or the bumblebee that goes from impregnating every flower. I think it's critical. That's Dr. Cole's one of his most famous quotes. Another one is being a male's a matter of birth, being a man's a matter of choice.
Right.
And David was 17 when he killed Goliath.
Yeah.
And I've known, and that's mature. He took responsibility for all of Israel.
Yeah.
Then I've known men who are 71 who are still playing video games. They're not responsible, not taking responsibility, they self-justify. But a lot of that comes out of not having a father.
Yeah.
That father figure is critical, and that's not just biblical things. That's a secular statistic that will tell you that without a male in the family, the family's weaker. and we're doing all that we can to help bolster that position.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I always like to hear stories of men that I respect, and I want to hear about their dads. What is the relationship? Sometimes they've got a really strong relationship. Sometimes it's not so much, but there was another man who stepped in.
Coach.
Yeah, coach. What is your story on that front?
I have still a great dad.
Okay.
He's 88. He'll be 89 in January.
Wow.
If you're in our circles, everybody knows Poppy.
Okay.
And Dad was an All-American guard at Baylor University. He was my coach. He was my hero. He was my dad. So I just looked up to him tremendously. If he said blue, it was blue, and if it was red. For me, he could do no wrong. So in my eyes, he was my hero.
Okay.
And I was the quarterback. He was the coach.
Wow.
I went home with the coach.
Wow.
Everybody else went home.
Wow.
He became my principal. He became my superintendent. I never could get out of his, his sight, basically. But he stood for a lot of things that were black and white, right and wrong, even though we were not necessarily a consistent church-going family, if that makes sense. He stood for right and wrong. And then when I became of age in my late 20s, I found Dr. Ed Cole.
Okay.
When I read Maximize Manhood, I recognized the patterns and principles that my dad had taught me. But Dr. Cole, simply connected the dots to the scripture.
Okay.
Now I understood what my dad was talking about with integrity and character and treating older people right and treating women right. And those things, we did them now for a biblical cause, and they took on greater meaning and purpose.
Now, okay, I didn't know that your dad was a superintendent. Now, what is a 30-second synopsis of your story? Because you went into education.
I did.
And you coached. What are all the dots there?
Yeah, I played football in high school. Got a scholarship to go play for the United States Air Force Academy. Lasted about a year there.
Okay.
And because of the military atmosphere, I wasn't real familiar with that. Loved the football and loved the aspects of the physical training, and just didn't understand quite all those. I transferred to Stephen F. Austin to finish out my athletic career and my academic career. Okay. Got a master's degree in educational psychology in 1985, and just became a teacher and a coach because that's what we all did.
Right.
I didn't think I would stay with that forever, but it was a good degree an overall degree. And then I took a job as a principal of a private Christian school because I could do it for my pastor. And that was my way into the ministry, so I could go to Bible school at night with Pastor Walter Hallam down in Lamar, Texas. Okay. And from there, we stepped over to Katy 6 years later and started a church. Never thought I would do that. Never thought I would do that. And I met Dr. Cole on the way, and he encouraged me. He said, you need to be a pastor, but he said, focus on men. In other words, build your church on men so that you have the best of both worlds. Greatest advice I ever received. And then he took me under his wing for the next 6 or 7 years, and I became a disciple of Dr. Cole, so close to him that when he died, he asked me to do his funeral. And I don't know if you know this, but he had many, many pastors that he mentored that were mega church pastors, like 30, 40,000 members. Okay. And he was their pastor. I didn't know that. He made you feel like you were the only one.
Wow.
That was powerful when he called me.
Power was, I was thinking humility and power. Yeah. To be able to speak into someone's life and not have to talk about all of your fanfare on the other end. Yeah.
It was just known. And wherever he went, people knew Dr. Cole. He was the father of the modern day men's movement. Okay. He was the one that led Coach McCartney to the Lord.
That's interesting.
McCartney became the guy, Promise Keepers. Yeah. Yeah. And millions got saved there. So just a great network to be a part of and to know that.
Wow. Okay, so Ed Cole, I'm going to have to follow up on that. I'm familiar with McCartney. I'm familiar with the Promise Keepers. And there are a lot of good ministries that are going on today. And you are part of one, Manhood University, and we just don't have the time. I wish I can learn more about this. And we're going to point everybody to the website, all your information in the show notes and how people can get back to you. But I was thinking about some of the aspects of Manhood University, and I like some of the objectives here. One you talked about, the living with an offensive position, and offensive. It's not like, hey, I'm offended, but how do you win a football game? Well, yeah, you need the defense, but the offense
takes the ground.
And in war, you take the offensive, you
Right.
take the ground. So how is it that we can encourage young men? How can young men live with an offensive attitude?
Well, they have to be trained, just
Okay.
like anything else, and we
Okay.
all understand that, and we all say that. And again, the circles that I travel with Dr. Cole had great preachers and great teachers of principle and pattern, but nobody had built a brick and mortar building to prove what we needed how we needed to fix these men.
Right.
And so I'm a proponent of putting your money where your mouth is.
Right.
You really don't believe it until you sacrifice. So I thought, why don't we take our 30-something years of experience and put it into a teaching model where we can actually offer men a place to come
Okay.
and teach them how to be the future fathers of America. And I looked and there was nothing. Our major universities, I went to Oral Roberts University, I went to Liberty University. What are you teaching men? Nothing.
Nothing.
There is no class to teach you how to be a responsible, mature male. And yet it's our number one problem.
Right.
Is the leadership in our country are immature. They're called men, but they're really boys.
Mm-hmm.
The term boy is actually the definition of an immature male.
Okay.
And that's what we have left today. But everybody's pointing at the issue, but they're not pointing at the solution.
At the solution. Yeah.
So we said, why don't we pioneer it? And so that's what we did. I'm not trying to say we are the best at everything. I'm just saying we just stepped out and did what we knew to do, built a building, and now we're on our third year, our third class of men from around the world that are learning how to be responsible, victorious, offensive men that take the offensive, not offend, but take the offensive and taking ground. And if you don't believe that type of man who will work, look at what your Muslims are doing all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
They don't mind being offensive. They're taking ground, buying ground. The Chinese are buying up land all over America. That's an offensive position. Where's the Christian? Where is the light of men? And that's what nobody had an answer for. And so we thought we would just begin the process, just like this ranch was a beginning. We're pioneers at best. And I hope I see a lot from this, but I may not. It may be beyond my life, and I have to be okay with that.
Yeah. So I think of offensive opposed to just being passive.
Right. That's the point.
Being passive. And we have so many young men who don't know who they are. They don't know what to do.
Right.
So the objective is to help them figure out who they are and how what they're created to do, and
help them find their passion.
Okay.
Because purpose identified creates passion.
Purpose identified creates
passion.
Okay.
When a man doesn't know his purpose, he always returns to his past.
Okay.
So what we have is we have men that don't know their purpose. They don't understand they're eternal. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
So everything they fight for is temporary. And then when they get it, they're not satisfied.
Right.
And when they don't get it, they're not satisfied. So they're walking around unsatisfied, and their poor little wife doesn't know what to do.
Okay.
So we're trying to take the rein and point everything towards eternity, because that game's forever.
Right.
The temporary is about 85, 90 years.
Right.
That's it. But why not go for the long game?
The long game is, that's actually the phrase that I was just thinking right there. So living with purpose, you talk about living honorably,
Sure.
and I think of, this is just me. I like European history and knights and armor and things like that. So I think honor, that's what I think about, a knight who is loyal and honorable to his king. What does that look like in 21st century West?
Well, honor, again, this is just my opinion.
Okay.
So that's all it is. So like it or leave it or lump it. Nothing really makes me well up or get emotional like a veteran of a foreign war.
Okay.
And seeing him salute or watch him on a stage and just think about what he did for me.
Right.
And it's like nobody cares about that man. And you've heard this before. You're a man. Nobody cares. Work harder. That's
I've actually lived a lot of my life that way.
Yeah.
And
that's the mantra of a male.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Work harder. So I lean towards that guy because I understand him, and I'm not in a pity party at all. I like being a man. I'll take that. But to me, it's unsaid. It's just honorable when that veteran just takes it and just looks at you and says, "I hope you've lived a good life. A lot of my buddies died for you to do that." I love that kind of a resolve. And I think men need to understand that's what marriage is. That's what a family is. And we get our fulfillment different than a woman or kids. And it's that we provided and we protected. And all I need you to do is say, thank you. That's it. You don't need to worship me. You just need to and just appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't remember the verse where Paul says that we are to give honor where honor's due.
That's it.
Standing up in the presence of older men. And really, as a man, I'm going to stand up in the presence of women as well. And just being a culture, creating a culture of honor, even if we don't live that way.
Sure.
I like that. You talk about demonstrating the competencies of biblical manhood.
You're talking specifically about manhood you.
Manhood you, or just in general.
Manhood,
So we live in a world in America today, in the West, where a lot of the biblical world view has been thrown out. We don't talk about it in public schools. We don't talk about it in the public sector. We've removed God, but what does it mean to be a biblical man? What does that mean? Do I need to read Genesis to Revelation and memorize the whole Bible? I mean, what does that mean to live with biblical competencies?
I think we complicate that.
Okay.
I think we make that too difficult for the average guy to understand, because the average guy is out there trying to make a living, to provide and protect his family. Give him something he can use. You said I was a coach. So one of the things I learned about in coaching, if you're going to be a good defensive coach, is you got to take your linebackers or your defensive backs, and you have to teach them how to react, not think. If that guy does this, I do that.
Okay.
Just give him a couple of things. If you get him thinking, you're going to get him beat, because he'll pause. He'll hesitate at the wrong time. Get him to respond. Get him to react. It's the same thing for building men. You have to give them situations and say, I want you to do this and do it like this. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
That's all you need to worry about, sir. And the guy will go do it. And he'll be victorious. And then you can teach him one more thing. I think to memorize the Bible, to memorize the scripture and stuff, you should do your best. You should read the word, but then just commit it to your heart. Here's what I tell them. Just do the right thing today. Can you do the right thing today? Just today. Can you just do one day and do the right thing? Sure you can. When you know to do right and you do wrong, it's sin, James 4:17. So do right. Just choose to do right. Just make it a goal. Today, I'm going to do right. Can you do right for this 5 minutes? Sure you can. Then can you do right for 15? Can you do right for today? And then string 2 days together. Just get disciplined to do the right thing. That's what a man does. And that's what we honor in these men. They're not complicated. They're simple, but they're powerful.
Just I've said before, let's just do the next right thing. And so you did your year at the Air Force or Navy?
Air Force Academy
in
Colorado Springs.
I know where that's at. I did not join the military. It's funny. I got a call from the Marine recruiter 1 week before I went to Bible college, because I'd been in the recruiting office a lot of times in junior high. But I know guys, and you know guys in the military. I have a son who's a Marine, but isn't that what they teach you in basic? Whether it's the Marines 13 weeks or the Air Force 6, it's like, just do this, do this, do this. And it becomes rote.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of what I'm hearing you say is part of being man is just doing these things over and over. And it's not like, man, I've got to learn this huge project. I've just got daily, just the daily grind.
Well, that's why we should also rely on older men, because they've been there before we have.
Yeah.
And we can trust them. You need to find one you can trust. And then if you have a question, say, what about this? And they'll say, yeah, do it this way. And you do it. But you're not thinking through 50 steps. It's just 1 or 2 steps.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they guide you because they've lived 30 years long before you. And you can trust them. So you don't have to do all the other ancillary things. You just do that one step.
Right.
I think that's the way you train young men. And that's why we built Manhood University.
Okay.
And we really want young men to come and be a part of that. Go through 1 year with us. It'll change your life. It'll set you up for eternal blessings.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking at. We're training eternal warriors out there.
Well, okay, let's talk about that for a moment. So it's a 1 year program.
1 year every
How does it
quarter.
work?
Every quarter is when you come out to Jordan Ranch.
Okay.
And we have about 30 per class right now.
Okay.
And basically, I take you through my whole life and the decisions that we made and the Bible verses that go along with it. And then we also take you to how to do men's meetings, how to preach the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
how to go into the Amazon, how to find unreached people groups,
Right.
do adventurous things. That's what men want.
Yeah.
They want a great adventure.
Yeah.
And you want, as a man, you want something to give your life for.
Mm-hmm.
We're all looking for that. And so we show you how to do that. And we introduce you to people from Italy, from South Africa, South America, all over the world, all over Texas. And you get these connections that help you figure out your purpose. And now we're into passion.
Here's what I pulled out of that. So we're figuring out our purpose. So it's not just, okay, I'm going to sit here and write out some ideas and brainstorm and storyboard. And I'm sure there's a place. Well, I know there's a place for that. But what I'm hearing you say is that purpose comes out of our actually being on the field.
Yep.
So we're going to fumble the ball. We're going to make mistakes, but we're actually doing something.
Right.
Not just sitting back, but we're doing something, and the purpose will evolve or mature or whatever out of that.
You're right. Every what you call a mistake is a learning process.
Okay.
It's not wrong. It's not a mistake. It's a problem that you solved. So you didn't lose. You learned.
Yeah.
And that's how we handle it. So when you come out here, we do a lot of stuff outside at Manhood U. It's not just in the classroom. We go fishing. Most guys have never fished.
Yeah.
You think they have, but they haven't. And if they fish, they never caught the fish. And if they caught the fish, they never cleaned the fish. If they cleaned the fish, they never ate the fish. So we have a whole step right there in life. And they've never thrown the shot put. They've never thrown the discus. So what I do is I say, here, go throw it. And so all 30 of them throw it. And I say, now let me show you how to throw it. And then they throw further.
Right.
So I just proved my point. You need a coach in life. So it's practical applications through illustration.
Right.
We do that. We shoot skeet with shotguns. Most guys have never shot a shotgun in their life. Zip lines. I mean, you name it, we're doing it out here. I think this year we're going to actually clean a pig. You know, like you'd butcher one. You'd show them how to do. How do you?
Yeah, most men have not been hunting.
They've never used a knife on anything like that. So, God forbid, the grid goes off. And we've heard about that. We've seen that. How are you going to survive more than a week?
Yeah.
How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
How do you feel like a man if you can't do that?
Yeah. And I don't think you have to be an expert in that, but just be familiar with it.
That's the point.
I am. So I was part of a very, very good scout troop when I grew up in Amarillo.
Okay.
I mean, a big scout troop, and I learned simple things. You know, the power. You know, a few years ago when we lost power in Houston, I was able to figure out, okay, you know, if you put the candle under this thing, it'll you know, make a little bit of heat, and so it's not. You know, I don't hear you saying that you have to be an expert in all these, but just to be aware.
That's 90% of it.
Yeah.
Is be exposed to it.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not starting from zero.
Right.
How do you change a tire? Most guys don't know how to change a tire.
Right.
Heck, I don't even know. It's been years. I carry AAA. That's how I change a tire.
Yeah.
But I know how to do it. I know how to do it if I need to do it. I know how to survive. I know how to shoot a deer. I know how to clean a deer. I know if I needed to, I could do it.
And see, I would think, and I'd be curious if you have any stories, I would think that if a guy learns these things, that's going to give him confidence in other areas of his life.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. I figured that out so I can figure this out.
Yeah. And I feel confident that if something happens in our society, I can protect my family.
Yeah.
But you walk a little taller.
Okay.
You know, and you feel better, and it helps your marriage. So those are the unseen things. But Manhood U, it's, you know, I was in Daphne, Alabama a couple of months ago preaching to a group of men. And I've been invited there by two guys who went through Manhood U. They were there, and they were preaching. So it was the three of us. They asked me to be the third guy on the docket. And so I just found myself sitting there in the congregation watching these guys kill it. The guys are shouting them down. They're screaming. This is great stuff. And I'm looking at those guys thinking, I knew you when you couldn't say anything.
That's neat.
And I'm just overwhelmed with this emotion that, God, this is where my life has taken me, where I've got two pupils that are speaking life into. Those guys are loving and they're really good.
That's
I mean,
neat.
I've seen a lot of preachers. These guys have come into their own, and they're 2 of 12. And I'm just thinking, this is what it feels like, you know, to teach till every man is taught. 2 Timothy 2:2.
Right.
Until we do that. And that's what Manhood U has become. It was an idea. That's all it was. It was an idea. And now it's come to fruition. Where we sit, Jordan Ranch was an idea. PowerHouse Church was an idea.
Right.
All of those were pioneered efforts. They did not exist and they became an idea from God, and then they were followed through, and now, literally, I did the numbers the other day, multiple millions of people have heard the gospel from something that was just an idea, and then it had a sacrifice, a buy-in,
Right.
and then it produced a harvest. And now these 2 young guys, along with the other 10 of them, are out there preaching and teaching and creating their own ideas.
Right.
And I don't feel that old.
Well, I tell people that Moses didn't get started until he was 80.
He was
so,
80. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm an old, decrepit guy. I'm watching this stuff happen, and I feel so sorry for people who never prepared like that. Who never prepared like they would see 3 or 4 generations, a lineage or a legacy.
Yeah, we don't hear a lot about legacy these days.
No.
GF, you talked about thinking critically. And I like that because it seems like in our day, especially with so many people, just they hear something on social media and they just believe it. And a lot of our schooling today is to pass the test or just receive. But what do you mean to think critically, and why is that important?
I think you hit it on the head right there, is that social media has really caused us to think differently.
Okay.
We take our phone and we're looking at our phone and we see something that we agree or disagree, we go right into it emotionally. If you have kids, sons and daughters, they believe that before they believe you.
Okay.
That's dangerous because these people on here don't know them, don't care for them, didn't die for them. Their parents did. To think critically, I think, is biblically. You've got to go back to the source.
Okay.
And honor your mother and father. Know that there's nobody on the face of the earth that really loves you like they do because they birthed you. They have vested interest. You don't know that if you have no kids. You don't understand that kind of love.
Right.
And I think that's what I mean by critically. Go back to the greatest common denominator. See what that foundation really is before you make these emotional decisions.
Okay.
We're making men at Manhood U that understand that concept, and they go back to the beginning. If you're athletic and you're a track and field athlete, and you're doing great, and then all of a sudden you begin to kilter off or fall off from high jump or long jump or whatever you're doing, your event is, coaches will always tell you, let's break it back down and go back down to the foundations.
Okay.
The foundational things that you used to do when you were learning your skill or your craft. Let's go back to the foundation, and then we'll start building back up because somewhere in there you missed it.
Okay.
And that's critical thinking, is let's have the maturity to go back, back up to go forward.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't understand that. And it takes a man of maturity, maybe a few years, that can tell you, you're not going to like what I'm going to tell you, but in order for you to go further, you need to back down just a hair.
Okay.
I train elite level shot put and discus people out here at the ranch. It's called Texas Throwers Camp. And they do very well at the state level meet.
Okay.
We had several gold medals last year, which means the best in the state of Texas. We have about 12 or 15 that have gotten Division I scholarships in only 5 years. And many of them had multiple state championships. So we've become a place for elite throwers to come out here. Well, many times they'll do well at one part of the season, and they'll have what do you call it? Just a bad day, and it turns into a bad week and a bad habit, and they can't get over this thing. We have to totally flush that brain and go back to our basics.
Okay.
Go back to the foundation, and we always do that. So I'll tell them, check your left foot, spread your gait, do the things that are fundamental to having a good throw, and let's start again. And this is the same with life. You've got to go back to what worked for you. You got to get back down to the basics. And the Bible works, and faith works. You were in the meeting today when we did the all in. Did you hear how people began to respond when y'all were just reading? Each one of you were reading. Did you feel?
Oh yeah, and I love that I love Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so amazing that you had a Winston Churchill quote in there. So
yeah. Well, did you feel the anointing? Did you feel the people?
Yeah.
That's how people want to be, and that's the foundations. That's how you got excited about going to the ministry. You read things like that. You said, "Is this possible for me?" And we got to go back to that if we want to go further. And I think you need a coach for that, because he's the one that stands in the press box and sees you from a position you can't see.
Yeah.
And you got to allow him to do that. Even though he's older and slower, he still sees what you can't see.
So that requires some humility.
Absolute humility and ability to be coached, desire to be coached.
Okay.
And then you got to pick the right coach. But once you pick him, it's like your mate. That's it.
Okay.
You chose him. Nobody made you choose him.
Okay.
Just remember that when you disagree with him.
Wow.
You chose him.
So GF, we've talked about it a couple times, a coach. What would you say to a guy who doesn't have a coach? Where is he going to find a coach? Because you could find a lot of coaches out there and a lot of bad coaches out there. So where are you going to go to find a coach?
Well, it's up to you to do the research.
Okay, so do research.
Yeah, you got to put the time. It's got to be important to you.
Okay.
And so you got to have a desire and a research because it's your life. And so you got to put your best foot forward in that. When I found Dr. Cole, I knew who he was. I'd read his book. I'd seen that it worked. I studied who he was. He was the father of the modern day men's movement. So I gave myself to him. I basically said, "You're my father. That's it." There came a time when he asked me to do something that was very difficult. I had a planned trip to Africa. I already had 2,000 people committed in Africa to come hear us preach. I had 6 or 8 committed to fly from here over there. It wasn't cheap.
Okay.
I already bought the ticket. And he asked me, he said, "I want you to go to another place with me in the Middle East." And I said, "Dr. Cole, I've got all this planned on that date. I can't do that." And he looked at me and he said, "You'll always be able to go back to Africa." But he was on his deathbed. He said, "You'll never be able to go here with me again."
Okay.
And at that minute, the Holy Spirit reminded me. He said, "You chose him as a spiritual father. You claim him as a spiritual father. And all these great things he's done for you for 6 years. Now we'll see if he's your father. Now we'll find out how you respond to this." So I went over and canceled my trip. And he passed away about 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So I ended up going to Africa instead of with him because he didn't make that trip.
Okay.
But I was willing to do it. And I think that was a pivotal point in my life where you gotta find the right guy. And when I read his book, I knew that was me. When God opened that door for me to meet him, I knew that was God. So there has to be some God moments in there. But once you know, you know. And it's like having, a child that has 2 parents and he keeps going to mom or to dad and plays them against each other.
Okay.
You need one authority, one father. Paul said you have not many fathers. You have many 10,000 instructors, but you have not many fathers. I'm a believer you need one.
Okay.
The cool thing about that is you pick him. He doesn't pick you. You pick him and he says yes.
Okay.
And from that point on, you do what the man says.
Okay. So there's a providential piece in this.
Sure.
That,
hopefully, everything.
Looking to see what kind of doors that God opens.
It was in my life for sure.
Okay.
And I met with 2 pastors today, and they said, "God told me to come here. Now I know why. We need covering.
Okay.
We need spiritual fathers. We need coaching.
Okay.
Would you be that?"
Okay.
So that's what I mean. You got to know in your spirit.
Yeah.
Because you're making a marriage covenant type commitment to that.
So a lot of what we've been trying to do, GF, in the man identity is just to encourage guys to say, "Hey, you can do this. I believe in you." Because they're beat up so much. But I'm also hearing, and I've heard this before, and I'm hearing this from you, that there's also this element of making the tough choices. In other words, you got to step up.
Sure.
You got to make the sacrifices. Tell me a little bit more about the sacrifices that we need to make if we're going to grow as a man.
Good question. I guess all we can do is tell our story, how we are in that and what that looks like. But if you're listening today and you are a young man or you're a man, period, I think it's critical that you understand the importance between being a successful man and just being a man.
Okay.
Being a male's a matter of birth. You had nothing to do with it. Being a man's a matter of choice. Jesus is our model.
He's the perfect man.
He is the perfect man.
Mm-hmm.
And manhood and Christ-likeness are synonymous. That's another Coleism. So how do I become more like Jesus? How do I become more mature? Well, Jesus was 30 years old before he did his first miracle, and yet he's known for all the miracles that he did. Matter of fact, the book of John says, the last verse of the book of John says, if all the miracles were written in books, the surface of the earth couldn't contain them.
Yeah.
Here's one problem. Jesus did all of his miracles in 3 years. He never started till he was 30, and he died at 33. So what's the catalyst to his miraculous destiny? It was the Jordan River that he walked into, the heavens opened up. You remember that. And a voice said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him." The affirmation of his father is what thrust him into his destiny, his purpose, which created passion. Today, in a fatherless world, which is where you live, 61% of all marriages end in divorce now. 61% of people grow up without a father. The other 40% of those 40% that's left, 39%, grow up normally with maybe a male in the room, but he's not engaged. So we got a very small percentage of people that are biblical fathers. Those men were not affirmed, so they don't know how to affirm their son. If it took affirmation from the Father for Jesus to walk in his miraculous destiny, don't you think it might take a father's affirmation in our life for us to walk in our destiny? Absolutely true. So why? What are we doing? We're raising up men to become fathers. We're raising up men to take responsibility, to affirm the young men, and basically say, "You're good. You can do this. And if you fail, I'll pick you up. Let's go forward. I'm sorry about the way you were raised. I'm sorry you didn't have a father when you were but that was yesterday and this is today. And I'm with you now. Let's go." We need that kind of resolve, that type of maturity. That's what we're building here at Jordan Ranch, Manhood University, PowerHouse Church. Everything we do is to change the man. Because once you change the head, everything else follows.
So we will put Manhood University and all of that in the show notes. And most of our audience is young men. We've got a few ladies that listen, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm thinking about older guys. I'm 56, so my age to your age. What advice, GF, would you give to older guys that are looking around and they're seeing just the chaos in our culture? We are seeing a little bit of a revival. We're seeing, even with our church, we have more young men coming. But what advice would you give to older guys to engage in younger men?
Well, I think what we've been talking about is we've given them the proof of why they're needed. They might need to be trained, so they have to be humble and coachable. We have a lot of older guys that come to Manhood U because they're like that secondhand lion. They're there to find purpose in the fourth quarter of their life. Thank God for that, because there's a ton of young men that walking around without a father. And that's what we do at Intense Men out here is that when the guys come out here, we give them a surrogate father, big brother, father, whatever you want to call it, but a perspective from your future talking to you. And I can't tell you how many 80-year-old men had never received a father's affirmation until they came here. They broke down and began to cry. I said, can you imagine being 80-something years old and never having a man hug you or tell you you're good? Think about the psyche on that thing. It'll mess you up. And I want to hit something you just said, and then I'll be quiet. You said something about the females that watch your program. I want to tell you this. Females are God's evangelists. Females have as much to do with this revival of men as men do. And we make a mistake when we go after men to get men. Women have the most to gain out of men changing. So they're the beneficiaries of everything we do. And the second thing is women have more influence over men than God. If you don't believe me, look at the story in Genesis. God told Adam and Eve, don't eat. Eve took the fruit and gave it to Adam and said, eat. Which one did he do? He followed the woman. Women have tremendous influence because we are providers and protectors, and we desire to do that to women. We desire to please them because God gave us that. But we don't want to displease them or upset them. So we're influenced by that in that relationship. So women, if you're listening today, why don't you influence your men for good? Have them come to church with you. Have them come to Intense Men with you. Or not with you, but on behalf. And take your sons and take your fathers and take your uncles. Have them go to Manhood U, because when the man gets fixed, everything is restored in the family. That's the whole point. Let's work smarter and not harder.
Work smarter, not harder. GF, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I always say, be strong, so be strong.
Amen.
You are strong.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Hope y'all enjoy that today.
One of the first things that I and we talked about this before we played the interview, is that one of the first things that jumps out at me is that the need for validation as a man, just to hear you're good, you can do good, take action. And it's not that men don't take action. I think it's that a lot of young men don't have the direction to take action. And I think that, like I said, comes from the fatherlessness and that need for validation and confidence, actually. Because when you get that validation from a father figure, it builds that confidence in you.
Yes.
And it's a father figure that pushes you to do different things. And once you've done a lot of these compilation of different things in life, you start to go, okay, I can do this. If I can do that, I can do this. And then that confidence just moves you forward, and one of my favorite things that y'all actually that he said in this episode was purpose identified creates passion. And
that was good.
Yeah. And it's crazy how almost every interview that you do and what these men talk about are things that I'm actually actively going through right now in my life. So I just wanted to kind of unpack that. Can you kind of help us maybe unpack that a little bit more about what men need to find that passion and how to identify that purpose?
Yeah, I think a lot of it begins with our premise as the man identity, that we are created in the image of God and we have this deep within us. And part of the problem is it's not simply for a lot of guys, they didn't have a dad or a father or, a mentor to kind of guide them, but in our world today, there are so many voices that are beating us down. In other words, if you've got a 3 or 4-year-old boy, in the playground, they've got purpose, they've got passion, but they eventually have a lot of voices tell them they're bad, they're wrong, they're stupid, they can't do whatever. But a young boy, he thinks he can do anything. Now he needs guidance because eventually he's going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
But there are so many boys, so many young men who have been, not only do they not have purpose, but they've been beat down. So we want to resurrect that. We want to find that. And, I think about my own life, Matthias, and this is not just me, this is a lot of men, that there are seasons when we're doing our work where we're just doing work.
Yeah.
Part of being a man is getting up, going to your job, doing your work, even when you don't want to. It's the maturity. And I liked how, I don't know if he said it or he quoted Ed Cole, that maturity is the sign of manhood, not just age or responsibility, accepting responsibility.
Yeah.
So part of life is just accepting the responsibility to get up and go to work, even if you don't like it. It's the right thing to do. You take care of people. But there are also times where guys get up, and it's like, man, I like my job.
Yeah,
and
which is crazy to me.
They've hit a sweet spot that matches that matches the way God created them.
Yeah.
I can balance a checkbook and I can do some math, but if you were to call me to be an accountant, I would just die.
Right.
But there are things that have more adventure to them. And I realize, okay, that's the way God created me. So this idea of when I can see who I am, how I'm wired up, how God wired me up, and I press into that purpose, passion's going to come out of me, and I'm going to want to do it more and more and more. And as I do it more and more and more, what happens? Well, I bring good into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll talk about personally. I know I do this a lot, but it's like as a young man myself, I'm 31. I think I'm still a young man, but I've lived a lot of this recently. I say recently, maybe like 5-6 years ago. I was going through just life. I was newly married, 2 kids, working a job. Had a stable income with my wife was working, I was working, and it was just the monotony of life. And going, really, is this really all there is?
Yeah.
And I think that purpose identified, it's like, I know my purpose right then and there, right now, even, until I die, is to be a husband first and a father. And that's a big purpose. But there was a time where I was like, what am I doing day to day to live out a purpose? and like I said, I know being a father, being a husband, it has it's a purpose in and of itself. But it's like, as a man, it's like I wanted more from my day-to-day life, my work, whatever it was. And I know that the Bible says, do all things unto God, like as if you're working for Him. But it's like I wasn't really living for an eternal. It's like I was a Christian. I was, going to church. I was, singing for my church there and stuff. But there was this longing for a purpose, for a greater purpose than just going to work, right? And I think it was that at that point is when I really started diving into like theology and like just started learning the Word of God more.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've seen Him play out in my life, just kind of developing my purpose, going through all these things, and starting this podcast, doing my channel and stuff. It's like it's because of my passion to do something bigger than myself for the eternal is what drives me, is what gives me that passion. And so I think it's like, and I know y'all touched on being something eternal.
We talked about toward the end about playing for the long game.
Yeah, playing for the long game.
How do the choices that I make today affect years and years down the road? If Jesus Christ doesn't come back for 100 years, how do the choices I make affect the future and my eternity, but also the eternity of others?
Yeah, how does it affect my children, my children's children, and so on? We never know when He's coming back. So we need to live as though our legacy, what we do for our children, what we do for others, has a lasting impact for let's just pretend hundreds of years. How are you going to live to make that impact? So I like that y'all talked about the long game, because it's like, as the long game is talking about, yes, long physically here, but also long in the eternal. So that those two intertwine. How the eternal is impacted by our actions here and for others. I really liked what he talked about men, because he was a coach. He talked about the men on his team, the defensive line, not thinking, but reacting. If this person does this, this person does this, just react. And I think as men, I think men are generally, in a good way, reactive. We take action. And I think there needs to be guidance for that reaction, though. Because let's take a man who isn't guided by faith, who isn't guided by, or who hasn't been mentored or taught. A reactive man can be volatile, can be dangerous when acting upon those emotions. Yeah,
knee-jerk reactions based on emotion. Yeah. And we have to control the emotion instead of allowing the emotion to control us.
Yeah. And that's, so I want to kind of separate those two, because that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about so let's say, for example, myself, I've been learning a lot about politics, been learning a lot about things, and I did streaming for about 2 years, just playing Rocket League. So I was like, okay, my kind of mindset was, I want to bring the light of Christ to this community online, because I like this game. Let me do something productive instead of just playing a video game. I
thought that was a good idea.
Yeah. And since then, I've kind of not outgrown that, but it's like, okay, I know I'm trying to make an impact here. But I think I want to have a bigger purpose than just here. I want to try other things to try to reach a broader audience, to try to be a good example, to try to be a voice of reason, to try to be a light for Christ in much more than just this area. Trying to remember where I was going with that. Going all the way back to reacting. And it's like, I'm seeing all this corruption. I've been learning a lot about politics the last few months of my life. And I'm seeing a lot of corruption I didn't see. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, I see it better, or I'm more aware of it. But why I'm trying to branch out more, is because I'm realizing these things. I'm opening my eyes to a lot of this and going, wow, there's a big need for the light of Christ in this area, in this area, in this area. So it's that passion is driven by my desire for righteousness, for justice, for love, for light in this world. So I think and that even goes back to the quote of, identified purpose creates passion. So I just really wanted to emphasize that was such a good quote. It's such a good line, and so personal to my life actually right now. And I think young men need that.
Well, and I just want to take that another angle, because a lot of times the laser focus is, okay, I need a big purpose, which we do. But at the same time, if we see the purpose in the little things as well. I thought about this earlier with what you said and what I said about, part of being a man is sometimes there's no immediate excitement out of it. But I just need to get out of bed and go to work. Okay. Now, if I realize that part of my purpose is to be a husband, part of my purpose is to be a dad, part of my purpose is to provide for them, as the man, as the husband, as the dad, part of my purpose beyond all these other big things, I need to see the big thing. And part of my purpose is to protect and to provide for my family. And when I see that purpose, okay, that gives me a little bit more reason to get out of bed. I may not get out of bed just cheering and wow, this is great. But I get out of bed, even when I don't like my job, with a passion of, okay, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm doing this with purpose to provide for my wife, to provide for my kids. And ultimately, I'm to live my life for God.
Right.
So that was a beautiful quote. I like that as well. For me, that also kind of ties in with what he was talking about, living offensively. And we might hear that. And, there are so many people who are offended, in our day and age. And it's kind of like, hey, grow up, everybody gets offended, stop it. But it's the idea of the way I put it, it's the reverse of being passive.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what I talked about last week in the Man Identity Huddle, looking at that quote from Theodore Roosevelt, just getting in the arena. I may not get it right. I may fumble the ball. I may make some mistakes. I will, but instead of just sitting back and letting life come to me, I'm going to use my passions, my abilities, my purpose, who I am, and I'm going to go take ground. I'm going to go do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's a message that a lot of young men need to hear in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you can do this. Go be offensive. Take the offensive. Go do something.
Yeah, let's go back for a second to kind of what you're talking about, the day-to-day life. I think it's a matter of perspective, really, because yes, you can look at it as, oh man, this sucks. I got to get up. I got to go do a job I don't care about. I got to go do this. And I think it's a matter of perspective. And I've said this before in another episode where it's like, if I'm done with my work day, I worked, I got up early, I'm coming home late, and I'm like, man, I got to go home. It's like, I love my kids, but I'm drained already, but my job is to be a dad. Yeah. So if I look at it as, oh man, I got to go home. I got to, hang out with my kids until bed, if I look at it as if it has purpose, if it has meaning, if it's a mission, and I think that's what men need, is a mission, an identified mission. I think that's part of it. If I go with the mindset of, okay, my wife has probably been very overstimulated for the later half of her day, from the kids touching, mom, I need this, coming from multiple directions. If I go with the mission, like, hey, my wife's had a hard day, I'm going to make her day easy. It gives it a purpose. It gives it drive. It gives it, okay, this isn't just to make it through this day. This is to do it with a purpose. Or I need to go home and need to make sure my kids have a good relationship with me. I need to make sure that I'm a model for Christ so that they look up to me when they're older, instead of rebel, instead of going against me, or even not having a relationship with me when they're older. I need to go into it with that mindset of, this is to disciple my children in every possible way, age appropriate, whatever. However, is to develop that relationship. And if I look at it, I think the core thing is, if you look at each mundane task, if you just reframe it as some kind of mission, find some kind of mission out of it, then it'll have more purpose. You'll feel more fulfilled. You'll feel like you've got purpose, even when you feel like you're not living for, any big thing right now, or there's nothing outside of, that you have a passion for.
And all those little things build big things.
Yes. Yeah.
I was talking, matter of fact, GF and I were talking about church, and I made the observation that sometimes, what am I doing? Well, I'm advancing the ball down the field. It's like 3 yards at a time. Well, 4 sets of 3 is 12, and you only need 10 for your first down. So those little 3 yards, they add up, and that's what most of life is anyway.
And it's I think the hard thing is for men is that you don't see the fruit of that day to day. Yeah. I think it takes a long time. And we've talked about instant gratification when we talked about social media, the last episode with Juan. But a lot of the technology, a lot of the social media, things like that, it's instant gratification for your brain. Yeah. So I think it makes it even tougher to have the mindset of, this is an investment. It's a daily little investment here. And you may not see the fruits of that for a long time, but I think that's an important thing to think about, is it's daily little investments that you may not see the fruit of, but you will eventually.
And I think that ties into what GF mentioned when he was talking about thinking critically. So much of our thinking today is emotional. It's reactive. but when you're looking at a problem, and I like the way he talked about the coaching athletics, that, and I didn't mention this to him, but it reminded me of Vince Lombardi. Who is Vince Lombardi? Well, he was the coach of the Packers back in, I don't know what that was, 65 or something like that. And the Super Bowl trophy is actually called the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Well, the story is this: when he took over as head coach for the Green Bay Packers, they were like the worst team in the league, the worst team. Some people thought about shutting the team down. And for his first team meeting, he opened his teaching, his coaching, with this statement: "Gentlemen, this is a football." It wasn't this big rah-rah speech. It wasn't, we're gonna do all these trick plays. It was so simple. This is a football. We take it from this end to this end, and then you just build on that. And so many times, guys, with our thinking, we're just jumping to conclusions. We're not looking at the data. We're just immediately believing. And part of critically thinking is to say, stop. What's going on? Let's go back. Let's check the data. Is this true? Is this not true? Is this right? Go back to the foundation and let's start and build from there. And I thought that was a good lesson.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that, and he talked about this. It's like, some of the players or something they get too entwined and they have a bad day, which leads to a bad week, which leads to bad patterns. And it's like this cycle. It's like, okay, let's take this back to the foundation, and having to rebuild to maybe even better than you were before. And so I like that idea of taking it back to the basics, back to the foundations. I think that's important. With that, I kind of want to take that to the part y'all were talking about, what they do there. Like, he's like, okay, take this shot put, take this discus, throw it. Now let me show you how to do it. So I like that approach of just having people do something they've never done before. And then y'all talked about this, like having, like, gutting. He talked about maybe even gutting a pig, which I've assisted with gutting a deer before, and it's a process, but
it just kind of makes me hungry right now.
Not me. It makes me want to vomit. Just thinking. So this is a side tangent. I remember the first time ever seeing that. I went hunting with my stepdad, maybe like 13, 14 years old. And I remember him hanging the deer upside down and then just hearing the skin tearing as you peel it down. Anyways, grosses me out. I'm not a big gore person, but
and that's okay. That's because we are all different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's yucky.
but part of the point is that in their process, and so Manhood University, and you can find the information in the show notes online, and it's a process where he brings guys out. They have some books that they read, they listen to some lectures, they talk about things, but they also have some time where they just get out and do things. And I love that, because so many of our guys today, they go to the office and then they go home and they're on their phone and they're on Netflix or Amazon, or they're watching something and they're not doing anything. And, the goal is not, hey, we need to be, Grizzly Adams. We need to be, but just to be aware. And I made the observation in the discussion that, so many times when we know something and we can kind of do something, that gives us encouragement that, well, maybe we could do something else. Yeah. And so part of his process with Manhood University is just getting the guys together and walking with some other older men purposely to read these books together, to think about these thoughts together, and then, hey, let's go do something physical that you're not going to do in your normal life. And it's those experiences. The experience is the key word. It's the experiences that build us.
Yeah. And that's why I brought this up, actually, is I want to, is because we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's those new experiences of, especially if a man's never really done a lot of adventurous things, or a lot of different things, or, people have a fear of going to the gym, or people have a fear of doing a lot of new things because I don't know if I can do it. It's like what they think. And I grew up, and because without my stepdad, I would probably not be, I definitely wouldn't be the man I am today. I said a lot as a kid, I can't do this. And I've said this before, but he always said, I don't want to hear you say I can't. And so, and I've realized this. Yeah. I've realized this in my adult life is, because when I go to do something new, I'm nervous, I'm anxious. I'm afraid to goof it up. A lot of my issue and my identity is like, man, if I can't do this, I'm a failure. It's kind of where my brain initially goes. And I think that's where a lot of men's brains goes, especially if, they don't have that father figure for that validation. So nobody wants to look stupid. Nobody wants to make themselves feel stupid. So when we get out and we try these new things and realize, okay, I can do this, or I can do that, or I can do that, you may not be a master of it, but it's that confidence you gain each time you do something. And it leads into the other areas of your life of, if something happens or whatever, okay, I can handle this. I can deal with this. How do I figure this out? Not, can I figure this out? It's how am I going to figure this out? So that's why I brought this up. I liked that idea of building that confidence. And he even said, you stand a little taller once you've done these things,
And I have to confess that still, I still wrestle with that some. I think about who I am. I'm a little bit more clear on that than you and other younger men, just because I've been further down the river. But I know that God wired me up with creativity to preach and to communicate and to write. But there are times where I know, okay, I've not produced enough content of late. Part of it, I'm busy, a lot of irons in the fire, but I know that sometimes I'm afraid it's not perfect. I'm afraid. And if I can get rid of that and I can put more content up, more blog posts with the writing that I do on my Kingdomology blog, just more content, I'm actually going to get better. Just doing more and more and more. And it's like anything, the more you do it, the more you get it. You're going to strike out. You're going to drop balls sometimes, but not being afraid of those mistakes, because we're all going to make them. And we just, part of being a man is being responsible, and I'm responsible to get up and just keep going.
Yeah. And I think this is the last thing we can touch on here, but for example, the perfect thing is this podcast. I had lots of not doubts about our abilities to do it, but am I going to do a good job? Am I going to make not only am I not only going to make myself look stupid? Am I going to make somebody else look stupid? It was a lot of weight on me to go, man, I need to make sure I do a good job. This is something he's prayed about, he's wanting to do. So I felt the gravity of it. And I think this ties back into what we talked about earlier, being reactive, looking at around you and just doing things, not to overthink it. There's a time and a place to think critically, but there's a time and a place to take action and react, not based off of emotions. That's not what we're talking about. Like we clarified earlier, but there's a time to just take action. Don't be afraid to feel stupid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because like GF said, those mistakes aren't failures. You learn from them. You grow from them. They're necessary. Nobody's going to come into life and do everything that they try to do new perfectly. I'm not going to, pick up a new video game and be a pro at it. Like, I'm not going to be in the esport for it, or, I'm not going to start this podcast and immediately be Joe Rogan on it, So I think people are afraid to make mistakes, or afraid to look stupid, or afraid to look silly. But I think that's the biggest thing, is what prevents people from taking the action is their own in their head. So I think I really like this whole conversation. It's a lot of just what tying into being a man is, and not letting those things stop you, and finding that passion, finding that purpose.
Yeah. The last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on before we get to our challenges, GF talked a little bit about this toward the end, and it is a beautiful piece. Jesus knew who he was, but before he launched on his official ministry, he was baptized. He didn't need to be baptized because he sinned, but it was the inauguration of the ministry's beginning, and his father said, this is my son. And we are all looking for affirmation, and it's this question of how do we get the affirmation? And I know a lot of times guys look for affirmation from girls, and there is a part of us, in our beautiful design, there's this complementary idea of the husband and the wife working together, dancing together, and the husband wants to feel, okay, my wife respects me, and all of that. The funny thing is, I remember when I was in the 6th grade doing a flex arm hang in PE, and for whatever reason, we were all doing this one day, and there were a bunch of girls over to the side, and I'm up there, and I'm not the strongest guy, and I'm up there, and the guys are like, dude, Steve's still up there. and I broke my record. I broke records. Okay, what was going on? There was a part of me that's thinking, okay, those girls are watching. I'm going to stay up here as long as I can. But the problem is we cannot find ultimately our affirmation from girls.
Yeah.
That actually makes girls feel uncomfortable. They're going to want a guy who's grounded. But where do we go to find affirmation? And I think that's, GF talked about, a coach. So trying to put ourselves in positions where we are with other men, and we need to find good men who are grounded themselves, good men who know who they are, good men who see their purpose and their mission. And those are that ultimately we want to find it by receiving the promises of God and living in that.
Yeah.
But going to find older men and say, hey, can you help me out here? And then we want to be humble to listen as they coach us, and they'll say good job.
Yeah.
So to press into those mentoring relationships.
hmm Yeah, and I can speak firsthand. I won't go like super into detail or anything like that, but just from things in my childhood, like that's where I sought my validation, my worth, my value. Was if I had a girl, or if a girl liked me, that meant I was desirable. That meant I was worthy. That meant I was valuable. So I went from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend to find that worth, and of course, I was always left a little empty, a little just. It never fully made me feel that certainty that I was desirable, that I was worthy. So I think it was that chasing of okay, if I can get another one to think, I'm worthy or valuable and be with me, and obviously I'm not consciously thinking these things as a young man or as a teenager. I know we're not using that phrase, but so it's like, that's where I sought my validation, my worth. And, it wasn't even until after I got married that I really believed God's word and understood what it really means to be a child of God, and what that looks like, what that feels like.
Be a son of God too.
Yeah, to be a son. And it's like, it's finding that validation through our Lord is freeing, because you don't have to put your value, you don't have to put your worth in anything else, because that that's the highest position of all.
Yeah.
So
Matthias, you and I, we can't really do this, but I there's a part of me that wants to tell the young men that we believe in you. We can't mentor you. You're on the other side of wherever from us, unless you choose to, come to Houston, Cypress Crossings Christian Church, and, we'll do what we can to love on you and befriend you and get to know you and mentor you and all that. But I just want our audience to know, most of our audience, young men, and I just want you to know that we do believe in you. Why? Because we know who you are, that you're created in the image of God with purpose, and we just want you to press into that. I do have two challenges for us today. The little one is, GF talked about honor, and I just want to challenge guys to go find a Vietnam vet. We still have some World War, some Korean War vets, not a whole lot of World War II vets, but next time you see a veteran, or next time you see an older man who has sacrificed, maybe they were never a vet, but they had a job, they were faithful to their wife, they were faithful to their church, they were faithful to their work, and just thank them, to give honor. And here's the big one. I want to challenge guys sometime this week, maybe today, to sit down and to ask that question, what am I responsible for? Now, here's what I mean. There are a lot of times we get hot and bothered about things we are not responsible for, or in specific things that we can't do anything about. I think about Gavin Newsom, the Democratic governor of California, and I get hot and bothered a lot of times, but you know what? I don't live in California anymore. I can't vote. I'm not smart enough to be a politician. In other words, I am not responsible for that. What am I responsible for? I'm responsible to be faithful to God. I'm responsible to take care of my wife and kids. I'm responsible to show up. So the big challenge is sometime just get out pen and paper, pray about it, and maybe even ask God, okay, God, what am I responsible for? And make a list, 5, 10, maybe 15 things, and have that before you, because you're not responsible for everything.
Yeah.
You're not the savior of the world. You're not responsible for everything. But what are you responsible? And that's where you accept the responsibility and do that. And that's going to make you a stronger man.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back 1 second onto what you said about the Gavin Newsom thing. It's interesting that you brought that up. It's like, okay, and I know this is kind of is a funny thing, but it's like, okay, yes, you don't live in California. Yes, you can't vote there. It's not your responsibility. But I think the interesting thing is what we're doing right now is our part. We're helping shape, form, and teach and kind of help guide people through this podcast is our ultimate goal, young men especially, into thinking biblically, into thinking, not just thinking biblically, because we are a podcast of Christians. I know that we're not necessarily a Christian podcast.
Well, I think the point is there's a tendency to kind of separate, dichotomize,
Right.
you know, here's
Right.
my work life and here's my God life. Well, the
Right.
truth is it's all God life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're just a podcast, but obviously our Christianity, our faith is going to be a part of it because God is in all of our aspects of life. And I like that you clarified that, because we're not trying to separate, oh, this is just our podcast. You know, it is Christ, our love of God permeates our entire life. And we've talked about that in another episode too. But yeah, so I just wanted to say, it's like we are in a way doing a part that we are passionate about is trying to teach and lead and guide the young men of this generation to think in a way that may have consequences, that may have influence on things going in a better direction. And, you know, I liked how, this is the last thing, GF, because this kind of ties in, GF talked about, you know, how when the men get into place, they get their responsibilities, they're in order, everything else follows.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to encourage you, you know, you're like, I can't, you know, that's not my responsibility.
Well,
not directly, but indirectly, you know,
Matthias, Matthias, that's why we're taking this podcast seriously. You know, that's why I invested the money to get a better mic. That's why I think about the show notes. That's why I think about these things. And I want our audience to know that. And that's why when we made the observation or the request that, you know, send us your questions, send us your comments. It's not because we're sitting around thinking, well, you know, gee, what do we do next? It's because we care about the content. We have a purpose to encourage you young men. So if you have some questions, let us know. And I guess that kind of ties in with what you normally say. Hey, if this has been a benefit to you, like, subscribe, and share.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Steve, for summing that up. Yes, make sure to like, subscribe, share, follow, whatever it is, and then whatever platform you're listening to. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Man Identity. Be strong.
Be strong.